Clubhouse.
So if I bury him here, I must protect him and this place. In order to do that, I will sell the townhouse in Manhattan, establish a trust with the funds that exists solely to preserve this place, so that nobody, that includes all of you, can lose it or ever sell it.
Why sell your home?
Because I can't afford to take care of all of you and this place any other way.
We can take care of ourselves.
Well, this is the way I've decided. This is my home now. I die here too. And when I do, you put me right next to him.
Welcome to Pod Clubhouse's coverage of The Madison, the newest series from the prolific creator Taylor Sheridan. This is Caroline.
And this is Mike. Tonight we're discussing episode 2 of The Madison, Let the Land Hold Me. Just like the premiere, tonight's episode was written by Taylor Sheridan and directed by Christina Alexandra Voros.
Just a community note, please join us on Facebook in the Yellowstone 1923-1883 4-6s and the Madison Discussion and News Group to discuss the Madison and the whole universe of Taylor Sheridan and Yellowstone shows. Just a reminder, we assume you've watched this episode. We're not going to go step-by-step recapping it, but there will be spoilers. So if you haven't watched, please stop the podcast and go watch and then come on back.
Did this episode suffer from being the middle of 3 episodes released all at the same time? I don't know how this episode successfully stood on its own feet coming off of last week's premiere and knowing that there's a third one out there that was released at the same time.
It certainly seemed like it was like a middle of the road episode, which is unusual for a second episode. But you're right. I mean, it feels more like a 4th episode or something like that, where we're just like meandering in the middle of a season. I hope that doesn't mean that 3, 4 are the same. But I mean, we did have some good themes in this. We had a couple of important moments in terms of like moving forward with what's going to happen to Preston and Paul, moving forward with what Stacey's decisions are. But overall, I mean, there was some attempts at comic relief, some attempts at sort of understanding the personalities of some of these different characters. I think I'm with you that we're all feeling the clench of 6 episodes. And I think that makes us want to feel like something important is going to happen in every single episode. Unfortunately, that doesn't usually happen.
Let's talk about the themes of the episode, because I think it kind of rode throughout this episode. First, I think we need to talk about the idea of kindness. Kindness and being rude to strangers and different cultures and the things that are done the same and the things that are done differently. Let's take a listen to our first clip and then we'll talk about it.
Fry bread. You ever had that fry bread? You put this on top, you make Indian tacos.
You can't call it that. It's racist.
Oh, that's what the Indians call it. That's some shiner you got there.
Oh, I meant to ask you, is there a minor emergency center close? He got stung by a hornet.
Yeah. Oh, you got baking soda. You just mix it up with some water until it turns into a paste. You cover that eye. It'll suck the poison right out.
Right. Thanks. But maybe you could just, tell us where the hospital is?
Girls, when someone is trying to help you...
You can't say that. It's wrong.
Yeah, well, it's not your place to correct him.
Oh, someone should.
Oh, how gratifying it must feel to always be right.
Okay, do we really want to be eating some strange person's food?
Fried chicken, fried steak. Why would they fry steak?
Don't eat it, then.
Maybe ask what we like before you bring...
I blame myself. After all, she's raising you like I raised her. Complete strangers spent, I don't know, how much time they spent, how much thought went into this. Not to mention money. Looking at that truck, money isn't something they have in abundance. And you have the nerve to judge it? Spoiled little bitches we've raised.
Oh.
Coming in hot, Stace.
not on board with the end of that clip. I think it's fair to call them spoiled. I think that's fair to call out spoiled children as spoiled. But I think calling them bitches is too far.
So this was a bunch of different scenes that you've linked together. I wanted her to hit harder on like the custom of bringing food when someone passes away, and that is a cross-cultural experience that we have as human beings, and the idea of trying to take the burden off of those who are grieving by providing food, by providing hopefully comfort food that makes people feel sort of like the fry bread, like that's like a comfort food for me, like a less carbs, the buttermilk pie, all those things that even, the fried chicken, the chicken fried steak,
lasagna.
all that stuff.
I mean, we do that in New York.
If you think about it, that actually hits a lot of cultures, is sort of my point, is that you're really hitting a lot of different ideas of what is comfort food. And so I kind of wish that she hit on that more than this idea of like, when the kids are saying, why didn't they ask what we wanted to eat for? Like, the kids definitely had zero experience with this. To hold them to this standard of like, you should understand that if people are bringing you food when someone dies, you just accept anything that people bring. I mean, that's a very adult idea. For kids, I think it's like, well, you brought me food and that was nice, but like, they're accustomed to being asked, what would you like to eat? I think I'm not agreeing with that. I'm not saying that was remotely okay. And I was actually really cringing when she was correcting Cade. Okay, hold up a second. Like, he's telling you the name of the food. Like, it's really not appropriate for you to be talking like that to him or anything when he's explaining what the dishes that were brought were. And even them turning their nose up and being like, I thought the more ugly part to me was like eating strangers' food. Like that kind of business, acting like these aren't strangers, these are Paul's neighbors. I mean, I can count on one hand how many times the name Paul was said. It is kind of a bummer that for Paul, my goodness, I mean, it's going back to our conversation last week about or last episode. If you don't have a wife, if you don't have a partner, if you don't have kids, if you don't have close friends, whatever family you've made or whatever who show up, does your memory just vanish the second you're off the earth? Because for Paul, oh my goodness, we're only in episode 2 and no one's talking about Paul. I mean, his name was barely uttered.
Well, I don't know about that though. I mean, Cade said, I knew Paul really well, and him and the rancher had this agreement about the north fence. The funeral director said, I know Paul would want to be buried on that land. I knew him very well. I was actually surprised that Paul had touched so many people that they knew him well.
I'm talking about Stacy and the kids and all that. And they never uttered Paul's name. Yes,
no, they
Paul's
did not.
name was uttered in the episode. I wasn't saying that. I was saying the people closest who are making decisions for Paul aren't talking about Paul. But getting back to sort of your initial thing, I think Stacy absolutely lost it. Saying bitches and then trying to kind of like cover herself by saying, I'm not calling you bitches, I'm calling your mother. It felt very just lashing out. And hey, I've been through grief. Lashing out is a real thing. And I'm not being mean to Stacy on that front. But I think that language and looking into little kids' eyes and saying bitches is like, whoa, you're really like, you need to go be by yourself if that's how you're feeling like you need to talk to everybody.
It goes on when Abigail, after the bitches comment, that's when she steps up from the sink and follows her mother out. It's like, you can't say that. You're not they're not your children. And that's when Stacy wheels on her. And she gets to the larger point that I think she's feeling is, we've already forgotten why we're out here. Paige is whining upstairs in the loft. The kids are complaining about not liking the food that strangers brought them. And we've lost the thread of why we're here. My husband's dead. Your father's dead. Their grandfather is dead. And we're only on day 2. Does that excuse the behavior? Because, like you said, lashing out in grief is this thing that happened. Do we just have to accept that because she's the grieving widow? Or is it fair to call her on some bullshit?
I have some issues with this because I don't really feel like Abby has done much to get this spoiled bitch comment at her. I feel like Paige is definitely embodying the younger, immature, entitled sister vibe. Like, we got it on all levels. I do want to talk for a second about the absolute gratuitous nudity with her. I thought it was fine to show her bare ass in the shower to sort of explain like how bad the bites were, how bad the stings were. However, after they bandaged Russell's eye, there is zero reason why we saw her bare-assed again. She should have been handled the same way. She should have been bandaged up in the same way he was. and then there's zero reason why you wouldn't pull your shirt over yourself. Like, I really dislike it when Taylor does this because I don't think it's necessary. I understand the comic relief of these two. I mean, I was telling you in my notes, I wrote the name Russell, and then to the side I wrote useless, and I was laughing to myself at how the two words looked exactly the same. Like, Russell and useless looked exactly the same to my eyes. They were obviously supposed to be the comic relief. My only issue with it is I never laughed. I watched this with other people and no one in the room laughed. I asked you. You said you didn't laugh.
I fast forwarded. In fact, like
what do you do with comic relief that isn't funny? You know, it sort of gets to be a little bit like grating because as watchers, we're supposed to be kind of putting ourselves in Stacey's headspace. We're supposed to be trying to understand this level of grief she's going through. So in episode 2, after Paul and Preston have just died and we're just having this screaming situation in the coroner's office, now we're just showing Paige laying around with her ass up in the air and like making all these kitty jokes. Like, to me, yes, I think all of that falls under your category, what you just asked me. Like, do I think that they've lost the thread and it's only day 2? Yeah, I think that was pretty obvious that at least Russell and Paige should probably pack it up and go home because I don't know what they're doing there. They really have no impact on the story at this point.
And clearly don't want to be there. I mean, they say they don't want to be there.
But even to that point, they're not even impacting the story. They're not actively taking the car and leaving them, you know, without a car there. Like, they're not actually doing anything.
They're only there for the fish out of water elements.
And the nudity.
Well, always
because
the nudity. Right.
Literally, that was all that she was used for.
Right.
So it was like kind of awkward. And maybe I will try to give this credit. And I will try to say maybe they're trying to show the difference between a couple that have been married for 2 years, which is what they say, and a couple have been married for 40 years. And remind you of the you can't watch me go to the bathroom versus showing Preston coming into the bathroom while she's in the bathtub, showing the comfort over the years, showing that like there's no longer that hiding yourself, hiding your body, hiding the things you do to take care of yourself. Those types of moments, maybe we're supposed to see that as like a look at how relationships change over time, but that is really giving a lot on my side as the viewer, I think.
I want to go back to Stacey also because there's a bit of do as I say, not as I do with her too, because she's calling out the grandkids, she's calling out her daughters for being spoiled, for being ungrateful. But you also have to examine parts of her conversation here with Cade. Inside, when Russell asks about the hospital and he goes, well, they're just going to tell you the same thing. And he's like, well, that's fine. But like, where is it? And he's like, it's in Bozeman. And Stacey also is kind of like on Russell's side. Like, I don't want your homespun remedies. Like, tell me where the hospital is. Like, Cade's word on how to treat this isn't good enough for her. Before she asks about where the funeral home is, that she needs a funeral home, she goes, maybe when you have an 11-year-old, and he's like, I have an 11-year-old. She's also being very presumptuous. The conversation when she goes back inside and is like, I don't know, they didn't seem like they have money, but that truck is old and then this and that. Like, she's also making a lot of presumptions about these neighbors who were just trying to be neighborly. I'm from New York. I get stranger danger, and I also have a healthy paranoia of strangers. You and I talk about this all the time. Not the biggest people person, but also I understand neighborly kindness, the idea of bringing food when, he comes over and is like, we're worried you might be starving out here because Paul lives so sparsely. They don't know about Paul living sparsely because, like you said, they don't seem to know Paul at all. But this neighbor seems to know about Paul and how he lived. Even if the 11-year-old kid, and I don't know how old Bridget is supposed to be, but maybe let's say 16, 17, they're very young and obviously haven't been out of Manhattan very much at all, if ever, other than on their vacations. Stacey is 65 years old. She should understand neighborly kindness.
And the culture of when someone dies.
Right.
Forget about neighborly kindness. Has no one in her 65 years ever died where she brought food or even sent food from a restaurant? Let's be real. We understand their echelon of living. You've never sent food from a restaurant to someone's home when someone died? Never? You're a questionable person, old Stacey, if you've never had anyone in 65 years die. Now, here's the thing. We know that she mentions that her parents are alive. and that they're in New York City. That was like part of the reason why, you know, Preston would understand about staying there. I don't know. Nobody? You've never had a friend or family or anybody? No one's ever died? Like that, God, when we talk about privilege, that's privilege. If you make it to 65 years old and you've never known anyone who's died.
Certainly lucky.
Wow. So I agree with you. Yes, Stacey, I was really turned off when she made the assumption, and we talked about this in our last episode, about that if you live out here and you're a rancher, you must have no money. Quite the contrary. It costs a lot of money to run a ranch. We've learned a lot from Yellowstone, but just generally, you know, I shared last time, like just flying out there costs so much, just going around because of even scarcity of hotels and scarcity of grocery stores and restaurants and stuff. Like everything's more expensive. So the idea that these people have no money, I really think that is like sadly misjudging the situation. And maybe we're supposed to get that. Like, look at how out of touch she thinks you're only rich if you live in New York City. She doesn't understand that there are places that are expensive to be that are also not New York City.
Let's put a button in that, because I think that is a good, important concept to consider when we're going to get to the decision she makes in this episode, fresh in her grief, which she may not actually fully understand the ramification of the decision she's making here. But I want to close the loop. Two more things on this kindness talk. Cade gives quite the look back before he pulls out, almost like he wanted to say something else to her as she was going back into the house. But all I could think about was when he gets back to that ranch, what is he saying to his wife and to the rancher he works for? Because he says he works for the neighboring ranch. What is that conversation going to be like? How is he going to describe his encounter here at Paul's house with these people?
I have to think it would be a negative conversation. I mean, even if you tried to be very kind, at best, he could say something like, these people are really fish out of water here. Like they really, really are going to have a hard time figuring things out. I'm concerned for them. Those would be nice things to say. Not nice things to say would be like, wow. So the children are correcting adults when I'm just trying to deliver food. They all were like super edgy and wouldn't take my advice about how to handle, you know, a minor injury. And like, wow, these people are really not nice people. That would be equally fair for him to come back and feel like. I understand that they have like a stranger danger precaution when he sort of comes up on the little kids at the horse barn area. Like, I understand that would startle you, right? To see somebody on the property that you weren't expecting. There was an assumption that there'd be no landline, but Paul has a phone, I'm sure. And I'm guessing that, I mean, they said they had Preston's cell phone. I don't know. There could have been probably a way to give them alert, you know, that like, hey, we're coming over, you know, like letting you know so we don't surprise you. Because I don't know. Again, you don't sidle up on people on ranches because people have guns. And also they're not expecting you. And so that's like medium on all of that stuff. He could have honked his horn from his truck and then people would have come out and he would have been like, I just want to, you know, say hello. I didn't want to surprise you. However, I understand for the drama of the moment, you needed Abigail to come out bristling. You needed Stacey to handle it a little more normally, actually. But, you know, Abigail was ready to, you know, throw down.
Oh, she was like, children, get inside the house. Like, as if, like, Mrs. Gulch had shown up on her bike or something.
Or, well, a strange man and a bunch of women with Russell with one eye.
He's like, where are your children? Like, it was a little weird. I agree. But at the same time, I think probably to him, he probably comes over here all the time. It sounds like he would come over here all the time.
It certainly sounded like he talked to Paul a lot, which again just
maybe he was making an
part...
assumption. How about he maybe making an assumption that they would have a relationship with Paul such that they would know there was a neighboring ranch that they were in contact with.
That's what I was going to say. It just highlights that actually they're not talking about Paul amongst these family members, and they don't know anything about Paul. And you're so right that the funeral director talked about Paul and the neighbor talked about Paul. You're correct. But it's still unnerving to me that they're really just talking about Dad and there's no Uncle Paul. And you mentioned this when we were talking a little bit before, even the way that Stacey references Preston to the kids and to the grandkids, there's no pawpaw, there's no granddad, there's no even just calling him Dad. Half the time she calls him Preston to the whole group.
Oh, more than half. I was counting. I think it's only one time
weird.
that she referred to him as your father.
It's like your biological father, but not your dad. Like father is reserved for specific instances for me, especially when you're telling like a family story. maybe Kurt Russell is bringing too much warmth to the role. Like maybe if they had cast him as a little more of a stoic guy, if they never had that running around the plane going like, ooh, 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 like showing that he clearly had a silly side. Even in the journal, when it said that these two grown men, these brothers, went out and built a snowman the size of a Suburban, I don't know a lot of men with that type of whimsy. I really don't. I wish I did, but I really don't. The idea of going out there and building for like hours on end just to watch it melt and everything, that was all a lot of whimsy that I loved, but that I have a hard time reconciling that with a man in a tuxedo at the Met Gala who even remembered what the theme was last year. And also, they never took their own children to a place where you could have made a snowman. Like, you didn't make sure that your kids ever got a chance. Like, I'm sure y'all went skiing. If you were this whimsical of a man, why weren't you making snowmen with little kids? I'm confused about Preston. I'm confused about who this is.
It's Jekyll and Hyde Preston a little bit, like we were kind of hinting at last week.
But is it the casting of Kurt Russell, the warmth that he brings? Or is it that Preston truly is this wildly different person with his brother, and apparently a man who would not even build a snowman with his kids growing up?
The words were even supporting it, though, because again, I met your husband. He was a nice guy. I could tell. The funeral director in Ennis, which is like over an hour away from wherever they are.
Well, they obviously had to go into town for supplies and
sure,
stuff,
but
right?
that the funeral director would be like, I know him. Like, even if it's Kurt Russell bringing warmth, which I think there's definitely a bit of that there are words on the page being said that paints a different guy from who was existing in Montana versus father in New York City doing whatever that is.
And the my money. I'm not going to get over the my money because he never referred to it as our money,
right.
Which for having such a great relationship as they supposedly had
is a weird way to talk about it to me.
That is a weird way to talk about it. That is strange. And also, I have to tell you, going back to your comment about Abby's last words with him being, I'm going to pay you back. To be honest with you, I don't think that's a negative last words to have with somebody.
We're missing info.
We are missing info, but it also has this air of like some closure. Like I was actually in some sort of place where I was through my crisis enough to be able to say to my dad, hey, I'm going to pay you back because like I'm finally in a place where I can, or nearing to a place where I feel like I can. Her assessment that she was the disappointment of the family, especially getting to know Russell and Paige.
The great disappointment.
I don't see how we're supposed to get that because I think Abby has been a pretty level-headed anti this entitlement. I mean, her whole speech on gluten and like, where are you learning this from and all that said to me that she wasn't the kind of mom who was pressing the things that whatever Stacey didn't like about these kids. And I'm not saying whether you should or shouldn't like it about these kids. I'm just saying it didn't seem like Abby actually supported the way that her kids were talking and that they were blaming school as the place where they were getting these ideas. It was a head scratcher of not understanding enough backstory of these people.
Couple things, because I think we're missing so much information, so I'm filling in blanks here. The dad thing and the father thing and never saying those words and always referring to him Preston, it's made me start thinking, I wonder if this is a stepfather situation, which again, I know other people have already seen episode 3 and in just a couple days we're going to be having the rest of the episodes and it'll elucidate that one way or another. But I'm curious if that's actually the situation we're talking about here, which would go a distance towards how she would refer to him as Preston instead of dad or your father often, because that is more typical in a stepfather situation, I think. And also maybe goes a distance to the my money, but also having this whimsy side. That he loves his children. He was a presence in his kid's life, but maybe not a warm father in his kid's life.
Or in these girls' lives, since we don't know if
right.
they're these kids.
In these
right?
specific kids' lives.
And these two women's lives.
Right. Another thing is, I was thinking about, and it's going, actually, you made me think about it when you were mentioning about how Abigail, from what we've seen, she knew the history of bread, and she was questioning the gluten and all of that. Paige, who in the last episode referred to them as my daughters, I wonder if Paige has more influence on her nieces than Abigail is aware of.
Okay.
Because Paige seems like someone who would bristle automatically against gluten, for the sake of it, just assuming it was a gluten allergy. Yes, the kid said school, but it also seems very much in the Paige that we've gotten to know so far.
I agree with that. But I will also say that given that the age of the older girl, Bridget, this is the first time gluten has been brought up.
Right.
I find that hard to believe. I find that would come up at every meal. Now, hey, do I think that this was a Taylor Sheridan moment, which we get a lot, where you kind of like, you can pick up, like, I bet we could easily, if we had a big whiteboard, we could sit here and write down, like, Taylor thinks people who talk about gluten don't understand that it's the preservatives in the food, not the actual gluten. Like, we could write that and be pretty darn certain that's what he thinks.
Oh, you just have to go back to all of the Summer dinner conversations in Yellowstone.
Yes.
When the character Summer, if you guys watch Mainline Yellowstone, is that show's stand-in for Paige and Abigail and the granddaughters. I think it's the same character in the Taylor Sheridan mind. You know, I have an opinion. I haven't researched if it's fact or not, but I'm going to die on the hill that it's true. And then you have the Taylor coming in and be like, it's not true. And here are the reasons why, which was what Abigail is doing with her history of bread. I want to close the loop on this kindness conversation because it circled back around at the end of the episode. Stacy came out and called the girls over, the granddaughters over. I'm curious if you felt this satisfactory to closing the loop on this, and if the listeners found this a satisfactory closing the loop on the kindness conversation.
I heard you made our neighbors a card. That was the right thing to do. Do you know why it was the right thing to do? They did something to help us. Something we never asked them to do. They just did it. To be kind. Now, you can disagree with what they say, what they do, how they live, and you may be right. But there is no denying that they were kind to you. You can choose not to be their friends. You can choose to live your life completely different. But choose to be kind back.
We did. That's why we made them the card.
You made them the card because your mother told you to. But when you give them the card, give it to them to be kind.
On one hand, Abigail has to take the heat when her daughters say one thing and gets like discredited in some way. Like if you were calling Abby and Paige bitches,
which she does not apologize for here.
Right. Then if you say, well, you're only doing it because your mom said to, should you not go apologize to Abigail? Because she did have her kids make a card and she did realize that, hey, they're not getting the right message. This is only day 2. Stacy is dealing with the death of her husband and in theory, her brother-in-law, even though they don't act like there's a big loss in losing Paul. I really feel like we're trying to give her as much grace as possible. I wish that there was some sort of acknowledgement either by Stacy or even Cade could have said something like, you're all grieving. I understand people are going to say things, that they don't mean or whatever. Like you could almost have an outsider even say it. It gives these people some out of like, sometimes they're going to say irrational things. And sometimes they're going to say things that are way more intense than the situation actually warrants. However, you have to remember they're under this tremendous pressure of grief and it's all shock. This wasn't a long illness and now they're grieving. This was a sudden tragic accident. I have to let people off the hook on that stuff, but it's difficult because as a viewer, you want the story to make sense all the time. You want it to kind of click along the tracks and things to be laid out in front of you. And when people zigzag around and they don't stay on the tracks and they're calling, and on one hand, they're calling Abigail a bitch. And on the next hand saying, you're only doing that because your mom is so kind that she would have you do that. It's like, oh my God. Well, like, Abigail's damned if she does, damned if she doesn't, like, what is she supposed to do? I appreciated the overall idea of like, when you give the card, give it with kindness. Don't give it with like a chip on your shoulder because someone else made you do it. I appreciated the sentiment of that.
And also, you don't have to agree with people. You don't have to be friends with them, but acknowledge if they're being kind to you, be kind back to them.
Be respectful.
And be respectful to them. Don't correct them. It's not your place to do. You can disagree with someone without having to correct someone in how they live their life, especially when it is halfway across the country from where you actually live. There's a little tie into here too, because the night before, Abigail gives her mom a heads up, right? That the girls made a card. Stacy's response is, was it about instructing their use of like pronouns, I think is the joke that she makes about it. So yeah, you're right. Stacy really wasn't ready to let Abigail off the hook here at all. It bothered me that Stacy didn't apologize for calling her granddaughters bitches to their faces. I would have liked to see her say, I don't agree with how you guys were behaving yesterday, but also I went too far and I am sorry for that.
I agree very wholeheartedly, especially if you are trying to give a lesson on kindness and treating other people with kindness. Then that's where I was saying, like, I kind of wish the lesson wasn't about kindness. I kind of wish that the lesson was about this cross-culture humanity of taking care of each other when people are in times of need and saying thank you and being grateful for people to take care of you. I kind of wish there was a shift in the lesson, because I think the kindness lesson is lost when you're screaming bitches at children and you don't apologize. Then kindness, lady, like, come on. That is clearly not your motivating tenet here. Like, sorry.
Before we move on to the next big theme, which was Stacy making decisions that will impact her and her family's future, do you agree with Cade's opinion that you have to hang your horseshoe up as to save your good luck?
Oh, okay. So this is a cultural thing for me. So I'm Lithuanian, and in our culture, we have a huge culture of hospitality and sharing. At holidays, you're supposed to leave an empty seat at the table just so that in case anyone knocks on your door, you can invite them in. Like, that's part of my actual culture. So for us, we actually hang our horseshoes upside down, but we do that with the idea that when you hang it right side up, you're keeping the good luck in the house, but only for yourself. Why we hang it upside down is because our intent is to have the good luck flow over everyone who enters our door, and strangers included. We're sharing the good luck with other people. So what he said was not incorrect in terms of like holding it where the U shape is upwards does collect the good luck. It's just in my culture, we believe in sharing the good luck. So that's why we hang it differently.
Okay. I also hang it upside down. I have one over my front door, and it's because I don't think it makes a lot of sense to just store it up. Much like money, you can't take it with you. Share the good luck and let it rain down on everyone who comes through the door.
You're so funny. You said, okay. like that was like a big speech of mine. Okay.
Oh, no, I didn't mean it any kind of way.
You literally went, okay. like you freak.
No, I think it was very instructional, and I happen to agree with you.
It's in our book. Like, we have an actual Lithuanian customs and traditions books that we follow. It's like, it is the way we do it. I wasn't trying to be instructional in any way.
I've got no paperwork on mine. It just makes sense.
You have no paperwork for yours? No, well, shit. What does that say about you?
I know. I just have my beliefs, my dumb beliefs.
Your own personal beliefs?
I have my own personal culture of one beliefs, so... But they align with yours, so I'll say I'm adopting Lithuanian custom.
Okay, you actually believe in Lithuanian customs?
I'm going to bandwagon on the Lithuanian train.
Well, I appreciate
Between that and pierogies, I'm on board. So,
hey, I know you're a pierogi lover, so you got that part.
This may be a, Mike, you're just a silly guy question you don't understand. But for where these ladies are, and now we're a full day into what can only be described as roughing it in the most way that they've probably ever roughed it. Why are they all still wearing so much jewelry? They're sleeping in the most complex necklaces and rings and earrings. Paige, just in her nightie with her ass out, was in full jewelry. Abigail was wearing like 7 necklaces and like her earrings and stuff. Like, that feels exhausting to keep all of that going to me.
No, I know you, and I know that you're a pretty anti-jewelry guy, but some women sleep with all their jewelry on. That is just part of their persona. They literally sleep with all their necklaces and rings and earrings on. I don't do that. I usually take off all of that kind of stuff before I go to bed.
It feels like it would be a hazard.
I have friends who I know for a fact sleep in their gold chains and sleep in their earrings and their hoops and all that stuff. I'm not sure exactly what it is, but you're familiar with that. There's like permanent jewelry. That's the kind where it's actually soldered together, like on your wrist or on your neck or whatever. So it's possible that they are wearing permanent jewelry in that regard. But no, I think you're right. I think that the oddity to me was, why are you walking around in a tiny negligee?
Negligee.
It's not even a nightgown; it's a negligee.
Yeah.
But you're walking barefoot. Like that was a weird. Like you're wearing the least amount of clothes possible, and you're being barefoot, but you have all your jewelry on. That felt like an off to me. If you're somebody who is barefoot and wants to wear as little as possible, you would take your jewelry off because you do like to have sort of that freedom of your body or whatever, right? You don't want a lot of extra stuff on you. If you are someone who wears all your jewelry, it seems like you would have put a robe on and you would have had shoes on. One or the other. I agree with you on that.
Let's get to the series of clips that walk us through how Stacey comes to her decision to move her out here to be with Preston. Let's listen to the first clip, which is from the beginning of the episode when she takes Stacey up to Stacey's Valley, even though they were supposed to have all seen it at the end of last week's episode. Twice we see it this week, and it's like the first time they were there both times. I'm very confused about that, but moving on, let's play the clip.
This was Paul's home, and in Preston's heart, I think it was his home too.
Mom, if you do that, you can't visit him. Hey, don't you want to visit him?
I will visit him.
And what if the new owners don't let you?
And why would there be new owners?
Because you can't keep this place. I mean, how are you going to take care of it?
Take care of what? It's 3 cabins. Only one of them has water. What's to take care of?
The land?
The land takes care of itself.
Okay, well, Mom, who's going to take care of you while you're out here? I mean, Paige couldn't even go to the bathroom without needing a trip to the ER.
I am not Paige.
Fair enough.
Do you think this is any more dangerous than walking to the pharmacy down First Avenue?
Yeah, I do, actually.
Yeah, well, I don't see it that way.
Mom, I don't know how you move on.
I have no intention of moving on, ever. I will never love again. I won't even try. Holding on to him is the closest I will get, and that is what I plan to do. I didn't bring you here for your permission. I brought you here to share my decision. I may never love again, Abby, but you certainly will never have another father, and your children are down a grandfather for the rest of their lives. And they learn nothing about him, standing in front of a tombstone, surrounded by the corpses of strangers. He loved this place. He stays here.
I like the passion of the speech, and I like that she's acknowledging what we were kind of guessing at, that if we were being honest with ourselves, Preston also considered this his home, which is a wild statement given the fact that she's never been here and refused to come for 30 years, but she is acknowledging that that's true. But also, this seems like a horrible decision to make so fresh into your grief.
I do agree that they absolutely tell you not to be making big life decisions during this time. I thought the funeral director did a really wonderful job of explaining this initial choice of where to bury him. It made me think that the right thing to probably do, or the thing that gives them the most grace, would be to cremate him and Paul, and then have a moment, take some time for some grief, and then decide if you want to bring them and inter their ashes in that land. You could absolutely do that. You could actually put it into a casket type thing and put it into the land. Like, you could do all those things. To me, I feel like there was a middle ground answer to this that they just decided not to hit on. Stacey was in the middle of being very decisive. I also felt she was being very stubborn in terms of, like, you know, Paige was quick to say we can take care of ourselves, and Stacey just cut that conversation right off.
Right.
I don't know if that's because Paige was being like completely unrealistic. Maybe they were paying all their bills and she just felt like that was just like a throwaway comment out of Paige. She really couldn't take care of herself. But Abby can't either. Like, so all these children are completely dependent on Stacey and Preston?
I don't know. Again, I feel like we're missing information. I feel like so many of these conversations are being influenced by things we don't know yet. That keeps being my takeaway in so many of these conversations, especially in the relationship kind of conversations, the interpersonal relationship conversations. What am I missing here? But I agree with you that she was definitely being stubborn here. And let's play the funeral clip, because I think she realizes it's going to be more complicated than she is at the beginning of the episode, even though I think at the beginning of the episode, she says pretty clearly what she feels like her decision is. But she's going to learn that it's going to be a very involved process to do. It's also unclear if Paul owned this land in Stacy's Valley. No one has actually discussed that yet. It feels like to me he didn't, and she may actually have to go purchase this land in order to inter them how she wants.
Some of the stuff that he was saying, I was stressing out a little bit, because I was like, I feel like he's being very definitive about some portions, and other parts I'm like, I know for a fact that's not exactly how it would happen. So I'd love to listen to it, but we definitely need to discuss.
This cemetery can be private just for my family.
Absolutely.
Is it best to use an attorney?
Depends. You got the deed and a survey showing the proposed site?
It sounds like this is a job for an attorney.
I can recommend one if you like.
Thank you.
Mrs. Clyburn, I knew your husband, and I knew his brother very well. Well enough to know that his great wish would be to spend eternity on that place. I can guess the same of Preston, but I feel obligated to point something out to you. If you sell that land or your children sell it, the new owners have no obligation to allow you to visit him. And they can decide to remove the cemetery altogether, have your loved ones exhumed and move their bodies to a new location, or have them cremated. It may give you peace in your lifetime, but beyond that, the vessels of your beloved, and maybe even you, are at the mercy of strangers who do not know of your husband's love for that place and frankly don't care.
So when he goes on to say, just think about it, because this is a decision that cannot be undone. Brother, you just listed all of the ways in which it probably will be undone. It made no sense to me what he was saying there at the end. Like,
right.
You just said, you said more likely than not, it will be undone. They will be moved probably at some point once you're gone.
I appreciated what he was saying in terms of like making sure that she understood the ramifications. If everyone's gone in the family and then the bodies are exhumed, again, respectfully, properly, legally, and moved, if you're going to bury in a place that's not a designated cemetery, I mean, there's always that risk. I don't know. If you were Stacy, what do you think about this idea of basically throwing the remainder, it sounds like, of their entire wealth into a trust to keep the bodies there? Does that make more sense versus, say, cremating them and spreading their ashes on the land and hoping that the future people will allow you to come every once in a while and be able to visit the land? Maybe in selling it, you could put a clause in there that says, you know, allowed to visit this property, you know, once a year or something to pay respects to this portion of the land or something. Like, I don't think it's totally unlikely. And once you get down like several generations, it's like probably no one's visiting it anyway. That's part of the reason why I would like to be cremated, because I think anytime you're put into the land, you're always running the risk that at some point someone's going to stop coming to see you there.
On that point, and this was something that just kept pinging to me, because we've now watched just 2 hours of the show, and we've had 3 separate people raise to her the idea of where you bury him because of the visiting him. Liliana says it to her on the phone in the first episode. Abigail says it to her at the beginning of this episode. And the funeral director, who she doesn't know, brings it up to her as the major sticking point here in this conversation. Yeah, it's a consideration, obviously, the where someone's buried and being able to visit them and that concept and all. It was being highlighted so much, it almost felt personal to me, maybe to Taylor Sheridan, that it's come up so often in such a short span of time.
But I wonder, what does it mean? Like, what do you think Taylor's viewpoint is on that? So you should be conscientious of where you're burying because of that? I will say this. I've only been a part of one choice of this with my mom. And for me, we chose to cremate her, and we actually chose to separate her ashes into 4 separate urns so that each of my siblings and my dad each have an urn. I'm incredibly grateful that that was the decision. There was no pushback on that or anything, because my children talked to her urn. I talked to her urn. Hilariously, friends of mine who knew her, when they're in my house, they'll talk to her. They'll acknowledge her. And in a way like, hey, like, I'm glad you're here kind of way. Like, there's something about it to me that, like, keeps her in our lives. Now, several generations from now, will people care? Will people take care of it? Will people pass it on? I can't know, but I kind of feel like that's the kind of the truth for anybody, right? No matter what happens to your remains, you don't really know what's going to happen generations from when you go. But what's your feel on like what is the point Taylor's making, or is he just raising a discussion point?
It seems to me that he seems to think where you bury a person is a paramount concern in the aftermath of the death of the person. My takeaway from here is that it's the primary thing we need to consider when we're considering burial, because it's been so forefront of the discussion.
I mean, we know in Yellowstone, they had a family cemetery on property.
I make you a bet did not have any of the red tape notifications that the funeral director, considering that it was formed in 1883, right?
Right. We know when it started. Right. And so, right, you're correct on that front. But at the same time, I mean, I appreciated that he said we can't just have people burying people in the woods. Like, you understand that that's problematic.
Up where I live, there's a road that I drive pretty frequently, and there are several small cemeteries you pass on the way that are clearly just family plots on the land that, with the introduction of the road, probably made them more visible. And I have always thought to myself, that's wild to me. Like, they're just there. This is, I mean, it's the country, but it's much more compact than what we're talking about here in Montana. The idea that struck to me was, why not cremate, and then you can actually kind of travel with the ashes. You could get on a plane and bring them out. You can visit them. You can bring the ashes with you out to Montana when you wanted to, or you could leave them in the cabin while you own the cabin and then remove them. And you know, ashes in an urn become more transportable, so you can always have them with you. It doesn't have to be one or the other. You could just have them with you.
Here's the thing. He had a will. They very clearly told us he had a will. I mean, most people say what they want done with themselves in a will. So maybe they didn't, although I really highly question who the attorney was that drew it up, because you didn't have anything with, and the way they kept saying everything's all taken care of. A lot of people also have prepaid funerals with right. instructions of what to do. And a lot of times that's considered like part of the package of you doing a will and doing all this stuff. Again, if they had just said, oh my God, this was tragic and the paperwork is just a mess, there's no clear idea of what we're supposed to do. My God, we don't even know where the insurance policies are. That could lead to this kind of more confusion. But they said succinctly, everything was set up. Everything is here. We know everything. It's like, and he didn't mention where he wanted to be buried or how they wanted it to look. That seems odd to me.
That's an excellent point I had not considered, and makes a lot of sense, especially considering that she's like, we don't know, again, the status of who owns this land. So she's jumping in here with a lot of question marks. The fact that she doesn't have the funeral director says, well, you could do it yourself. Do you have the plot? Do you have the deed for the plot of land you want to do this on?
Right. And is it surveyed?
And it's surveyed, like, but just even the threshold question of, do you have the deed for the land you want to do this on?
Here's the deal about that, though. You know full well that Paul has got a very small cabin with very few drawers and whatnot. Again, having been through this, one of the very first things you start to do is starting to look for that paperwork. Mm-hmm. That's one of the very first natural things you do. He came across as a person who was pretty stoic, but probably had all of his affairs in order in a lot of ways. Certainly Preston, we were told, had all his affairs in order. I was a little confused on that point. Like, totally cool. I think she should use an attorney. That completely makes sense. But also I would have liked her to say, you know, I better look around. Where would the deed be registered? Could you tell me that? And I'm sure they would say the county courthouse, right? And have her go over there and pull the deed and find out whether or not that address and that plot of land was owned by him or someone else. Was he leasing it? We don't really know. God, I have to talk about that last portion when she's figuring out that Preston essentially built these cabins and even the outhouse because there was only tents out there at some point. I was like scratching my head, like Paul was living in a tent out there. And then this house was built for Paul to be in one cabin, and the bigger cabin with all the kids' games in it and stuff was all set up just in case Stacy and the girls ever came out there. All of that was head-scratching information. Like, so Preston improved the land. Preston built these buildings for his family, and Paul just happened to live here. I'm really trying to wrap my brain around who owned it and who was doing what here.
I had the same idea. I mean, I have a section here to talk about the journal, which we could jump to, but I want to finish the conversation just because we've played the first clip where she was talking to Abigail. I want to play the clip where she talks to the larger family because, one, after she learns about this red tape, she seems even more resolved to it. Well, she has that moment with the horse where she hops the person's fence randomly and I'm curious if the horse was supposed to be like Preston's spirit, the way it came and kind of nuzzled her. But I know from John Dutton, you hop someone's fence and you start nuzzling the horse. Yeah. Someone's going to cock a gun at you and pump it, you know.
I truly thought that when they were showing her touching the barbed wire, I truly thought that she was either going to like rip her clothes, cut her skin, or in some way the barbed wire was going to be a problem just because Taylor Sheridan has highlighted barbed wire in several series. I feel like this has come up. So I felt like I was like, okay, what's going on with this? But it didn't. I would also like to remark that they are doing a beautiful job and maybe a very unrealistic job of consistently catching magic hour, which if you guys are not a photographer or filmmaker, that is the time when the sun is setting just perfectly and the light is glowing on everything. And there's just this warm glow on the earth and on people's faces and on animals. There are many times when they were in Stacy's Valley, we're getting magic hour. When we're dealing with the horses, we're getting magic hour. Almost anytime we're dealing with some sort of outside moment, we're capturing it at magic hour, which bravo in terms of it just being beautiful, but also like kind of unrealistic that when these situations only happen at magic hour. I do want to say that on TikTok and on a bunch of different social media kind of things, I've been seeing these reels and whatnot about the healing power of horses. There's like this entire whole therapy of not hippotherapy, which my kids do, which is riding horses, but actually like laying down on a table in a field and horses come over and they literally are like sniffing on you and kind of noozling you and all this kind of stuff. And it's supposed to be this like highly therapeutic thing. So I was familiar with that idea, and I kind of had this idea that she was going to go over and like just touching them and feeling them was like part of it. But I don't think that was actually the total point. I do think she pulled over to have a moment where she was just yelling into the wind of like, I don't think I can do this. I don't think I can make these decisions without you. Like, I do think that's a thing, that just pulling the car over and just yelling into the wind. Like, and so, yes, there were horses. And yes, I think there was like some connection to the land and connection to the, I don't know what I want to say, like nature in general, right? I guess we could go so far as to think like, did she feel some sort of renewed spirit from this horse, some sort of soul connection with this, that's why she felt so sure of herself by the time she got back to her family, because she was absolutely not sure of herself and not sure how to make the decisions and not sure which direction to go when she got out of that car. And when she returned to her family, she was back to her, like, I know exactly what I'm doing version of herself.
I absolutely agree. I think she was overwhelmed out of the car. Maybe it's cheesy or whatever, but I think when she turned around, the horse came towards her. I think spirit or connection or whatever, even if it is overwhelming, even if all of the steps aren't clear yet, I think it reaffirmed the belief she had from the beginning of the episode that this is what she is meant to do. This is what she's going to do, you know, and then it leads you to this last clip where, you know, she takes them all up to the Stacy's Valley. Let's listen to this clip and then we can move on to other parts of the episode.
This is your father's favorite place. And where he will lay with his brother, someday me too. You could choose this as well, or choose something else. It's your decision. Your last decision, as it were. But I know that he would choose this if he were here to choose it.
I think it's perfect.
Wait to hear it all first. So if I bury him here, I must protect him and this place. In order to do that, I will sell the townhouse in Manhattan, establish a trust with the funds that exists solely to preserve this place, so that nobody, that includes all of you, can lose it or ever sell it.
Why sell your home?
Because I can't afford to take care of all of you and this place any other way.
We can take care of ourselves.
Well, this is the way I've decided. This is my home now. I die here too. And when I do, you put me right next to him.
Abby, do something. Do you know what happened when he died? The whole family died with him. Right here in the middle of nowhere.
So a couple things I want to highlight there just because we've talked about it. One, she says I'm going to bury him here with his brother. Again, there you would think she would say Paul, but she says his brother like she barely knew him.
Uncle Paul is what you would call him.
Not his brother.
Right.
And then she refers to
Daryl.
This is where Preston will be buried and I'll be next to him. Not your dad, not your grandpa. It's very strange. The more I'm thinking about it, and this is like real-time discussion, like, I think this is a step family situation. It's too sterile and clinical otherwise. It's weird.
I was thinking a little bit about anybody who watched Schitt's Creek and anybody who watched how they talked at the beginning when they were definitely the disconnected family of wealth and how they didn't know each other. And they actually have a very formal conversation in various episodes where they're like, we don't know our own children. We don't even, like, we speak to them in certain ways. There's a part where Moira doesn't know Alexa's middle name and stuff like that, where it's like, I think that they're trying to establish some amount of, like, they had so much wealth that there was like this whole absence of what we consider mom, dad, kids, grandkids. My only, like, and I have to put that on the shelf because then I have this other part of me who's like, Stacey's like, well, of course we would stay in New York City because we have my parents and the kids and my grandkids, like, as if she's this active grandma and active mother, which we're going to talk about in the flashbacks. So far, we've seen her do very little, almost nothing with these grandkids and kids. In fact, the majority of time she's spending putting on makeup or bathing. I find that odd. Like, he calls only at these times, or you guys are even only having discussions and you're always in the bathtub. Like, there's a level of, like, what do you do with your time? And
Ladies
what
who
are
lunch,
y'all's connections?
right? Isn't that what they used to call it?
Yeah, or ladies of leisure. We joke around all the time in my own family that we say ladies of leisure. And I mean that really of my own self because yes, we own a podcast company. And yes, I work. And yes, I have 3 children who have special needs and all that good stuff. But I don't get a paycheck. And so in a lot of ways, there's this feeling of like, well, you don't have a boss outside of your own household. But you hear what I'm saying? Like, they purposely showed her putting on makeup. Mm-hmm. As opposed to, say, just getting dressed, you know, like, but like pampering herself all the time. There's all this pampering that's going on. I again don't really get Stacey, and I don't really understand how she's making this decision to live here. I actually went back so many times, if not 3 separate times, to really hear what she said when she says the line, "This is my home now." Mm-hmm. I kept trying to understand, like, are you saying you're going to move to Montana? Are you saying you're going to live in that cabin with an outhouse? Are you saying you're going to build a house a la This Is Us in the place that you feel is most important to your family? What does it mean? And I just kept playing it back and trying to understand what this was. Having said it out loud, I'm leaning more toward the This Is Us. Like, this is an important place for the family. And so I'm going to build a homestead here. Not this cabin necessarily, not the outhouse necessarily, but build something here like the Dutton Ranch, right? It has the big log cabin. That this land is like my land and this view becomes my home. that is kind of where I was landing. Not that she was actually going to live in that cabin. That cabin would stay, just like if you guys have watched This Is Us, the original cabin stays. Build a much nicer, much more modern, much more what Jack would have wanted to build eventually home, like actually by his own drawings. They do it. I don't know. There's something here. Maybe we're going to find out in the journal that there's a drawing of a house that he wanted to eventually build here, because apparently it's Preston who built these cabins. So I have a lot of questions.
I think,
here.
well, and Cade let it slip that his wife wouldn't have been okay with the outhouse. So clearly they have indoor plumbing. So if you build it up in Stacy's Valley, if you build a house up there, you could have an actual house with real plumbing versus the cabin. So maybe.
And you could have that view every day. Like I could see.
Which would be a good remembrance of your
and
husband.
how amazing would that be of a 6th episode if they do have this sort of like country house feel with a wraparound porch where she could see a view of everything that he ever sent her pictures of in quote unquote Stacy's Valley. Not Clyburn Valley, not Preston's Valley, Stacy's Valley. And there's something about that, her building her home right there with them. If you guys remember the proximity, if you have watched Yellowstone, the proximity of the family cemetery to the home is actually like right there, you know, like it's right there. They don't go like tromping in the woods for hours to go find it. It's right there.
He says it at the speech he gives. He's like, 300 yards, every Dutton is buried from my front door.
There you go. And they can see it from that big porch. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, there would be some really beautiful closure about him wanting to have her out there for so long, to have her build a place. I don't like the idea that she would just live in these cabins. That seems too far away from like having to just like resign her own self. Like she should get to have her own twist on Stacy's Valley. She should get to have her own mark on Stacy's Valley. I think it would be really beautiful to see a home built there.
I wonder if she did visit an attorney just off screen, thinking about the plan with the trust and all of that, the detail that she actually had from learning about information from the funeral director to the, not that she had super details when she was talking to the kids, but she had more details along with the selling the townhouse and creating a trust that wouldn't be able to be interfered with. Like, that seems like, I'm thinking now aloud, like maybe she did stop by the attorney right afterwards and we just didn't see that yet.
I would like to mention, having gone through this, my children were not a part of any of these discussions. And I think that while I understand the concept of like leaving those 2 girls at home, I understand there's wildlife, I understand there's strangers and all this kind of stuff, but maybe they should have figured out some plot device where Cade said, hey, I have an older daughter who would like to show you around or whatever. Something where you could have kept the little kids busy for some reason, some plot device, even have them like, if she said, hey, I want you guys to kind of hang around over here. I'm going to put out these like 2 camp chairs. You guys hang out and like look at the river. Me and your mom and Paige and Russell are going to walk over here and have this conversation away from them, because I feel like I'm having, my heart is like having a hard time with how much these little kids are a part of all of this right now, and how it makes Stacy's grief and the intensity of the conversations, like Abigail yelling that this family has died here and everything, like that was said in front of little kids.
Right.
You know, like I have a hard time with that.
Or Stacy saying, your final decision, as it turns out, huh? Like, because when she's talking about, like, I'm going to be buried here, your father's brother will be buried here.
That laugh was so morbid.
Right. It was kind of like when she kind of laughed after she said how many, like, who has to die for us to make the next meal. Like, this was that episode version of that. Like, very dark humor, which I appreciate dark humor. Mm-hmm. But again, here's an 11-year-old and, like, maybe a 13, 14-year-old, like, right there.
I would say that there was a smattering of weird, inappropriate laughter in this entire episode, which, again, I get is like that. I laughed at various weird, inappropriate times. I made jokes at times that were not, you know, it was the only way for me to deal with the anxiety and the stress of the situation. Nobody gave me any bad looks or anything like that. But like, them all laughing at Russell and Paige getting stung by so many hornets, especially Paige, I really felt weird. My mom would not laugh at me. My mom would not laugh at me. She wouldn't. And she might have been like, God, what a crazy situation or whatever, but she wouldn't have laughed at me. Maybe Abigail laughs because she's like the sister and that's like, you know, bullshit stuff that sisters do. But I felt like I was trying to give them an out and be like, this is a dark humor thing. And they are just like expressing their stress in different ways. But it felt weird.
I want to talk about the flashbacks. Let's talk about the first one, because this is how the episode opens. Preston is climbing the hill in Stacy's Valley. He's trying to get cell service. He finally does as he gets to the clip, and I think she's putting on makeup, or she's taking off makeup, and she's only kind of catching every word. She's not terribly engaged with the conversation, but you see his enthusiasm when he stands at the hill and looks outward and sees the valley, and he takes the picture, he texts it to her, and the text with the picture goes through, even though he barely has cell service. I gotta tell you, I was so incredibly sad for him that she didn't remotely match his enthusiasm for the picture that he just sent.
Yeah.
It hurt my heart a little bit. Not that everyone has to like everything that everyone else does, but you could hear how excited he was in this place that he calls Stacy's Valley. And she didn't even pick her phone up. She literally like just glanced at it from like the foot away on the table.
There's more than that, though. She straight dismissed it and said, like, I don't care about mountains. Like, I care about the beach.
Right.
And here's the saddest part. He followed up and was like, tell me why you like the beach. Not in a defensive way, in a, I want to know about you then. What is it about the beach that makes it work for you? Like, actually still caring and reaching out, even though she was being dismissive of the thing that made him happy. Everything that she was talking about, I do have to ask you this question because it basically came up in this. She was talking about the horizon. They were talking about the straight line horizon versus the jaggedy line horizon. And there was, again, this sort of, I don't know, comment that basically there is no sunset in the city. Is that true? Is there no sunset in New York City?
No, there's a sunset. It's hard to catch, though, because it's always behind buildings. So you have to be standing in the right place.
I know that sounds silly of me saying that because...
No, the sunset like you get at the beach where it's like over the water and the horizon, or the sunset like you get here where it goes down in the valley. It's almost impossible to catch that in Manhattan because of the skyline and the skyscrapers and the buildings and the cavernous valley kind of that you find yourself in. Do those vantage points exist? Yes. If you went to the observation deck at the Empire State Building, yeah, you'd catch a rad sunset. But 99% of the places in Manhattan, it's very hard to catch the sunset.
I wanted to clarify because I didn't know if they were just being like really amplifying that or if that was like actually true.
No, the way they were catching the magic hour and the sunset, which I think she says to the girls in the first episode, they're like, we don't get to see that. And that's true. Not like that. You have to go somewhere outside of Manhattan to catch that kind of view. As someone now at 48 who grew up in the city, I always have my camera out for sunsets to videotape them and to take pictures because I appreciate them in a way that maybe people no longer appreciate if they grew up seeing them. If you're a SoCal kid growing up in like San Diego on the water watching the sunset every day, maybe you don't appreciate the sunset anymore, but I very much do. I'm like playing catch up in time with all of that.
It's just like as you get older, I feel like you appreciate things like that, nature, birds, things like that, sunsets. You actually start to care about that kind of stuff.
Also from the flashback, I think we just have some foreshadowing that I just want to place here in case it comes up and then we get to seem smart. There's the line that Abby's husband will never be out of the picture. And now we had the kind of one ominous phone call in the airport where clearly he was on the line. But that line, why else include that? Obviously, we're talking a couple of years ago where she was just going through the divorce. The girls would have been a little bit younger. Why include that line unless it's going to come back? So I want to note it in case it does come up. And then we can be like, oh, see, they foreshadowed that the husband will be making an appearance out there.
Going back to our flashbacks, we had a big conversation offline about the part where there is this bathtub scene. Preston's off camera, and I was assuming that he was on speakerphone. Then he actually comes into the scene. Like there's this reveal of the fact that he's actually in New York and he's actually there. Although when I was like looking at him, he didn't seem like a polished, different version of himself in this sort of Jekyll Hyde. I live in Montana, but I'm also a city guy. I didn't see the city guy who was there. And I kind of wish they did slick him up a little so that he seemed like a different person when he was in the city. But also, guys, that entire speech that he gives about the hunter-gatherer nonsense First of all, please go do your homework, okay? Please do not rely on this speech. That has been debunked a long time ago. That is not true. Labor was not divided by gender. There was absolutely women who hunted and men who gathered. They shared the labor. Like, this is actually like very wrong information. And it's important to me that we mention this because it puts this men as this, like, so long as they're providing, they don't need to do anything else. And women are over here multitasking with the children and the house and perhaps working themselves and doing other things outside the home. For me, like, I actually like have like a really big issue that Sheridan decided to like act like this was fact, because it's not fact. It just isn't. You can look up, it's in Scientific America, it's in a Harvard review. Like, guys, it's wrong. It's wrong information based on actual bodies that they dug up. As a 9,000-year-old woman who had big game hunter equipment like buried with her. Like, it's not true. So it's very important to me that this podcast be very accurate about that. Please go do your own research. Please do not believe this. Just because it comes out of the lovely Kurt Russell's face, please know it's not true. How did you feel about men being painted like that, as if you can only do a singular task? You are not smart enough nor capable enough to multitask or be a nurturer to a child or any of these things. You can just do one thing.
Well, as a very involved hover dad, I obviously didn't agree with it. I'm also an excellent multitasker, so I think that's all bullshit. I found it tone deaf, and again, like the Abigail Russell stuff is supposed to be comedy relief, I think this was supposed to come across to us as isn't the mansplaining Neanderthal routine so cute and endearing? The only people who actually find that funny and cute and endearing are the men who write those lines. I don't think it is endearing. I think the idea of, listen up there, honey, I'm going to explain to you how it is. All right, stop.
And even how historically it was when you're dead wrong.
Right. So I am happy that she called him on his bullshit and was like, just say you want to get drunk and go fish with your brother. And he does. And that part, okay, now you guys are being cutesy and that all works for me. This isn't the 1990s. We're not right, or the 1980s. We're not writing sitcom for NBC must-see. Let's not encourage this as a form of humor or endearment where, you know, we have to club the woman and drag her by her hair because she'll appreciate it. And isn't it sexy? Kurt Russell doesn't have to try to be sexy or cute or endearing. The man just is.
What I'm afraid about it is that people are going to believe it.
Well,
that people are going to watch this and men are going to say, oh, see, this is what it's like. And this is why I can't do anything except for go to work. I can't help with other things. You're a multitasker. I can't be ouch. Ouch.
I can't help with the kids or the grocery shopping or the cleaning.
I think Rip would look at you and say, what are you talking about? I multitask all day long. I am doing 1,000 different things. And, you know, I certainly don't think Beth, this is all Yellowstone if you're not watching Yellowstone. If you're saying, who's Rip, Caroline? What are you talking about? Yellowstone. I think that cowboys in general, they have to do stuff like birth, you know, calves. They have to do stuff that is cleaning out areas. They have to do all kinds of things that are what you would consider multitasking and nurturing and caring. And I don't know. I think it painted men in a terrible light. And I think it whoever is trying to get off on an excuse that they can't do more than one thing, this was giving them absolutely inaccurate facts to be sharing.
Right, especially since Taylor, and you and I were talking about this offline beforehand, Taylor does actually typically spend a lot of time presenting things that are, like, especially history things that are factually accurate and are shedding light on things. Like if you watched 1923 with the Catholic Church and the Native American camps and learning centers and the torture and abuse that went on there, like things like that. Like he has made a mark to bring to light aspects of our history and culture that people are generally not aware of. So now because now he's got street cred, you put this out there and it's dangerous. And for the people that are like, oh, geez, guys, lighten up. It was just a cute scene and blah, blah, blah. Nah, fuck you. Because This is damaging. This is why we still have the kinds of relationships in this world that we do, because of pushing narratives like this. Women aren't necessarily better multitaskers. We just force them to do things. We say they have to do X, Y, and Z. Change the narrative. This is not cute. This is not funny. And it's not something that you should just gloss over.
In the defense of men, they are perfectly capable of doing more than one thing at a time. I do believe that they can cook dinner with a baby on their hip and be worrying about their job the next day just as much as a woman could. Like, this is not gendered jobs anymore.
I would literally be nowhere if I was unable to do those things.
Well, you certainly wouldn't be the dad you are, or certainly wouldn't be able to take care of your everything you do, your whole life, if really all you could do is work and then you just sat there and waited for somebody to do something. Like, I don't know what you would have done. Like, you didn't there would be nothing else that ever got done. And that's just bizarre.
Let me ask you, with this scene, this is the first time we've seen them in person together. What was your vibe on their relationship now seeing them together? What was your takeaway from who these two were as a couple?
Well, again, we both talked about this before we got on the microphones here about, like, why did they keep him off screen? Why did they have him step into the shot the way that they did? Why did they just have his voice for so long? Was it for this grand reveal of, like, this is the first time you see these two in the same place at the same time? Is that why we're doing this? Because I would love to know the reason. I did note, and this is sort of more of like a production thing, when they kissed each other, he kissed her on the skin under her nose, not on her lips. And she kissed him on his chin, not on his lips. That's how they kissed each other. Now, I don't know if that's out of some sort of respect for their respective partners in real life. I don't know what that is, but it struck me that they did not kiss on the lips, like actually kiss on the lips. Maybe this is a small thing. Maybe I'm being real weird. Maybe this is just how that take looked and that's what they went with. So maybe I'm being weird here, guys. But if you go back and look, I feel like there's people who do just kiss on the cheek. There's people who air kiss. There's people who do different things. And I wondered what I was supposed to be gathering by them not kissing directly on the lips. I don't know what that was. How did you feel seeing them together? Did you feel like they seemed like a real couple?
I did, but I have been wrestling with, is it because it's Kurt Russell and Michelle Pfeiffer and they're just excellent actors? Or was I really being convinced by them as Preston and Stacy Clyburn? I don't know. Like Abigail, and there's so many questions that it feels like we don't know. I think we need to see more of them interacting together. When he revealed himself, he definitely didn't look like he just came from some high-end rich man's job in New York City.
Not slick and sophisticated. Not like somebody who goes to the Met Gala.
No.
I thought that was a wild detail to add, that they were attending the Met Gala and had been so many times that he would ask, what's the theme? And blah, 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 blah. Like, fascinating.
But a commentary on the level of wealth.
Beyond that, societal reach, which is totally different than wealth.
Yes.
You can be very wealthy and shunned. Fascinating.
I want to talk about this because this is a small detail that actually I do like, and it does work for me in the show, because we saw it last week and we saw it again this week. When she goes up to Stacy's Valley after this first flashback, she pulls up her phone, she pulls up the picture that she was too disinterested in to look at years ago. She pulls it up now and matches it against the view that she's seeing with her eyes. I like this. I like this mechanic. I liked it last week. I liked it this time because it feels like her working through something by doing it.
It feels like using the journal as the treasure hunt. And it's like, you know what it feels like? It feels like in Goonies when they hold up the stone thing and he matches it to the 3 islands that are like sticking out in the water.
Yes.
Like there's this like matching of like phone to what she's seeing in front of her that feels very satisfying.
All these things she didn't pay attention to years ago that he was sending her pictures, now she's finally putting to use. And there is something satisfying about that. There is something very closing the loop about it that I like. So I hope that continues. There was also a small comment she made with her daughter, but just because we're here in the story. She says, he reminds me, and then she's like, reminded me. And then she makes the point that past and present tense is hard. And I think that's a small detail that they didn't need to include, but gave some authenticity to like real grief fresh loss kind of thing, talking about someone still in the present tense. And I don't even know that you need to correct yourself to make it a past tense, but the fact that she did kind of struck me as something that felt kind of real, like a real struggle people go through.
I think it's extremely real. I find myself doing it with my own mom, and I find myself choosing when to correct it. Sometimes I do correct it, and sometimes I consciously don't. Sometimes I say, my mom does that, and I don't feel the need to say, did that. So I do think, and I'm only 2 years into the grief of it all, and so for me, I wonder if I will have a moment where I am adamant about correcting that or not. There are times when it's important to me that the other person understands that I'm talking about somebody who's not here anymore, so I will correct that. This really happens to people, and they really struggle with how to talk about their loved one.
And again, something that you don't normally see in any kind of TV or film when people are talking about their grief or loss. Like, it's just not normally mentioned. So I appreciate that they didn't overlook it here. You talked about it a little bit before, but I want to circle back to the journal because we see her after the second flashback later in the episode. She's reading the journal. This is from when they were just like 40 years old. So if the journal is 25 years of history, this is pretty fresh. This is when Preston was pretty new to coming out to this area and keeping the journal, at least. And she gets to read in real time when he has the idea to build the cabins, one for the girls, one for them, build an outhouse, build a kitchen with running water, drop a well. She gets to read this idea in real time, and it struck me as something that was a real gift for her to get to do. I also found it incredibly sad that he did all these things that she never and the girls never got to experience. But also, I wanted it to hit me harder. It didn't hit me as hard as I felt like it should have hit me emotionally. I do feel it's sad. I do feel it's a special gift that she gets to read these words from the past coming back. Not that I wanted to cry, but I felt like it was supposed to make me cry, and it didn't. How did this journal scene work for you? Were you just befuddled by learning that he's the one who did all the improvements and not Paul, who apparently was fine to sleep in tents? And maybe you didn't get to the emotional side, or did this work for you in an emotional way?
The clinical side of me, the side of me that does the podcasting with you, where we're analyzing what's going on and we're trying to figure out, like, putting the pieces together. I was really very stuck on some of the stuff, like, wait a minute, Preston did this? Preston is the one that would have gone into town and bought all these toys and bought all these games and or brought them with him, I guess. I don't know exactly. I think I was pretty stuck on that over the emotion of it. Her sort of like, fast response, like her like running out onto the porch and being like, what's in there? Like, tell me what's in there. Like, her response was like, I guess I would have felt that more viscerally than I did my own emotions of, like, sometimes you're right in shows where you realize a character did something and they're gone and you're like, oh my God, you like hold, put your hand to your chest and be like, oh my God, they did that because of XYZ. I wasn't getting that. I agree with you. I was getting her response. I was reacting to her response of realizing that he had continuously prepared the cabin and cabins for them to come. It hurts my heart because, again, we're going back to like that. I thought they had a really good relationship. Like, if they really did have this good relationship, why would he go through so many steps? And never was it clear to her that he cared so much. Like, it really makes me feel like there was a lot of lack of conversation, lack of communication between the two of them of what was really important. And while maybe on the outside they had a good relationship, she seemed almost checked out of it for a lot of years. Like, to your point, she was doing her makeup or taking her makeup off, whatever she was doing, and didn't even really look at the picture. And not really out of like being like resentful that he was like off on this, mancation or whatever he was doing. Like, she didn't actually seem annoyed by that. She just seemed checked out. Like, she didn't really care. Even when she said, if you had told me you were going on the porch to be drunk for a week, I would understand that. That probably hurt my heart more than realizing that Preston had did all this, because I was thinking to myself, like, you can't even understand wanting to go spend time with a sibling, and you have such little connection to your family that the idea of spending time with them could only be to get drunk, not to actually have experiences together.
She opened the second flashback in the bathtub by the opening line is, I just don't see the allure of it. Maybe in a relationship, it's not about you seeing the allure of it. Clearly, it's important to your partner. So maybe you get a little enthusiasm and interest in it. We don't know how many years into their relationship or into the cabin being there and to him going out there that conversation has, but it seems like it seemed like it seemed like a more recent memory than like the journal entry, which was from when they were 40.
Do you know what it is that bugs me? This is what bugs me. The two parts. There's two parts that bother me. One is the lack of curiosity that she had in her partner. I think that bothers me. You don't have to care about what he cares about.
Right.
But the pure lack of just being curious about his interests, about his personality, and that goes vice versa. I mean, God, he knew the Met Gala theme. He had curiosity about things she obviously cared about. He asked questions about things she cared about. So it bothers me. And again, kind of going back to that, I don't know if it's the Kurt Russell of it all or what, but the whimsy that he had with his brother and how she just seemed like, and I don't want to say this about Michelle Pfeiffer because I like her, but the wet blanket that she seemed like prove it to me. I have no curiosity. I have no whimsy. I have no sense of adventure. Prove why I should care about this. That's a big turnoff for me. Like, I'm like, why does he have to prove it if you won't even look at the pictures? Like, you're not even trying.
You know, I'm listening to you, and I'm thinking from last week where he's talking about going to the $30,000 a night villa. And as soon as he starts talking about it, Paul stops him and says, that shit doesn't impress me. And he's like, Paul, it doesn't impress me either. But if we're quantifying making it, this is by how much it costs this place is making it. That was a beach. That was a beach resort. He didn't care about it. Now listening to their conversation this week where she's like, I'm a beach girl. Well, what's about the beach? Well, now we learn from last week, he put it together. He went and took her to like one of the nicest beach places you could go.
Sounds like it, yeah. What about the part where she's in the bathtub and she says, is this just about you bringing some mountain bunnies up there? Yeah. And he's like, you are my mountain bunny. Like, it's like they live two different lives. Like, if at the end of this they said, and sadly, Stacy had amnesia and forgot all about how they met and all that, you'd be like, okay, that actually makes more sense.
She's trying to be like barbs and sarcasm and like sophistication, and he's trying to be like earnest. And heartfelt about it. But at the same time, I have to put some blame on him. You build cabins. You have this idea 25 years ago. You do all this work. You stock that cabin full of games, which when they show us, it's full of all these old board games and
It actually was sadder to see the little Fisher-Price barn. That was actually the sadder thing.
And you never was like, you need to come out. You have to see what I've done.
Or I'm going to take the kids. If you don't want to come, that's cool. But I'm going to take the girls out there.
Right.
My children have never built a snowman. Whose fault is that? Preston? Right. Why were you such a passenger in your life for 51 weeks out of the year? And 1 week you went and supposedly lived. Oh my goodness. Like, what are we talking about with living and existing? Like, and you were cool that you watched your children grow into adults having never built a snowman, having a cabin full of games they never played with. It's all so odd. I really hope we get more as to like understand like who was Preston, because I don't really understand him. How did he stay so upbeat and fun when 51 weeks out of the year he was apparently in a place he never felt like he fit in?
This is the conversation between Stacy and Laura last week at that lunch. Like, how do you keep your mountain man from fleeing the coop? And she's like, well, the girls, that's what keeps him here.
I guess.
Here's the problem, though. And I think after her realization about the cabins, and then she's sitting with Abigail and they're talking and she's ruminating that she always knew she had a good marriage. She just had to compare herself to her friends, and it was clear to her she had a good marriage. And I guess by extension, that means that Preston was a good husband. But realizes out now that they missed out on so much, that she didn't appreciate how lucky she is and how lucky the girls were, and that she and the girls missed out on so much, and that she and Preston, I guess, missed out on so much by never coming out here. Here's the problem. This is the problem. This is the problem with the show, maybe, or at least the theme of the show. You can't chase lost time. You will never catch it. This idea, if her idea is, I will make up for a lifetime of not coming out here, or half of my lifetime not coming out here and sharing this with my husband, you never will, Stacey. It's like chasing lost sleep. It's a myth. You can't catch up. She has to find a way to start fresh. And if that is out here, fine. But you have to change your paradigm of, now I'm going to try and make up for all the lost time. I don't think you can ever do that. I think you have to think of it more like, I'm going to start fresh out here and live the life that my husband wanted me to live, that I refused to try even and engage with for so long. Now I'm going to try. Because I think if you keep trying to make up for lost time, you're going to keep having these realizations of like the cabins and the girls and all the things you didn't get to do. And that feels like a very dangerous cycle to put yourself in for mental health purposes.
It certainly doesn't seem like you can be whatever you would call successful, because it seems almost like she's putting herself into some sort of purgatory. Well, I didn't do this, so like I'm going to do this now as some sort of almost punishment to herself. Like, I didn't appreciate what I had, so now I'm going to do like this self-flagellation of like living out here away from my children, away from my grandkids, away from my parents who are assumingly 85, 90 years old parents. And that's going to prove a point to somebody somewhere. That's my penance for being disengaged in my marriage, for acting like what he thought about wasn't important. That's not that satisfying for me. Like, I'm like, ouch, like what kind of punishment are you inflicting on your grandkids and your parents and your own children and everything? Like, what are you doing? Maybe, again, I said it would be a beautiful ending to have her build a house there. Maybe she builds a house there in episode 4 and by 6 realizes this is his tombstone. This house is a graveyard, and this isn't living either, living in someone else's shadow or living out someone else's dream isn't actually the right thing. Maybe I'm saying tombstone, but maybe I meaning mausoleum or something else, like giving up your life and thinking that that's honoring his. I don't know if it is. And I don't know if he didn't make it clear to you in those 51 weeks of every year, then why do you think now it would satisfy him for you to give up everything and live there? Like, if it was so important to him, why didn't he make it important in your living years? Why didn't he communicate that to her? I know he was doing stuff. Don't get me wrong. He's buying the games. He's building the cabins.
But then never communicated it.
Enough communication, right.
This is what we talked about last week. This is the failing here. I mean, it seemed clear to us last week, and even more so when you think about the amount of expense and time, especially only going 1 week a year. Maybe Paul was doing a lot of the heavy lifting, but throughout the year to build this. But like, money is being spent. It never comes up. Oh, I'm building all these improvements for you and the girls to come up. That conversation never happens. What did you talk about? It can't just be the theme of the Met Gala. Like, right. All that wasted time. It's
a show that makes you want to think and examine your own relationships. This is someone important to you in your life. Be curious. You don't have to like the same things they like. You don't have to participate every time, but my goodness, I do think that there should be like some amount of curiosity in your partner. That just feels right.
These are a couple stray thoughts that I had. One is about Abigail. I think there's so much about her and her story that we don't know that I think I really need to know to fill in some of the backfill of the conversations and emotions that they all seem to be having. I feel like Abigail in particular, we need her backstory. There was a thing in last week's episode where she pulled up these 2 little medical bottles to like help take the edge off her and her mother. They weren't like the NyQuil you buy at the store. These were like medical vials that she like took in her drink. And then this week's episode, she like kind of overdosed Paige and Russell on Benadryl to get them to sleep. And Stacey made some comment of like, I don't think they're supposed to take so much. And she made some kind of self-medication comment about it. There is this idea that they've introduced now 2 weeks in a row where she's very open to self-medicating. I don't know what that means, but as a single mom with a troublesome baby daddy and 2 young daughters, it's something that I want to keep an eye on. and see if it continues to be an issue. These last two thoughts are both very nonsense, and they relate to Paige and Russell. That's how you know they're nonsense. One is, do people really not know what calamine lotion is anymore? Has that completely fallen by the wayside?
I don't know. I knew, so I was like, huh?
Yeah. I mean, I feel like my youth was filled with calamine lotion commercials, but as soon as she said it, she's like, yeah, no, the pink bottle. That's like the stuff that takes the itchy stuff away. Like, I thought it was weird that no one knew what calamine lotion is, but maybe I'm just old. The last thing is, I would be much more hesitant to go shit in a barn than in an outhouse. With all the hay, do you know the snakes and mice and all the other creatures that could be hiding in the barn hay and all of that? Where versus an outhouse, like, you could see what's there. Like, you just take a look and you know what's in the outhouse. It felt so random to me that was the choice that they were clearly both making because they ran into each other in the barn.
I would rather do anything just in an open field. I don't even care if you can see. I don't really care. I don't want to be in an outhouse. I don't like to go in porta potties. I would rather just pee in the grass outside the porta potty. I hate it. If you think that there's snakes in the barn, I don't know what you think lives in that hole, but I am not putting my butt over the hole. Like,
that's fair. But open field, but a barn just seems like such a bad idea to me. And the last thing is, Russell mentioned the Hornets last episode. This episode takes place the next day. Did no one go to the bathroom? There are 1, 2, 3, 4. There's 5 of them, 6 of them.
Yeah.
There's 6 of them there. No one peed or pooed where they had to take care of the Hornets. That was so strange to me. Like that no one dealt with the issue to the next morning, where then didn't deal with the issue and got stung by it.
And was angry that, like, everyone didn't tell her when everyone already knew and was already told.
And at least 12 to 18 hours had gone by. Like, how did no one take care of this issue? Weird.
I mean, I get that they were trying to, like, set us up a little bit to know, like, as she was walking out there in her bare feet, we all knew what was going to happen. But it was like, oh, man, no, I'm with you. And then just the anger for so long and the game between the two of them, I didn't love any of it.
To quote my notes, I am already like, enough of these two.
I said Russell looks like useless on my paper.
By the way, is it just me, or does Patrick Adams, is that his name?
Patrick J. Adams.
Patrick J. Adams. He looks a lot like Bradley Cooper to me.
A little. I think he looks a little bit like Neil Patrick Harris too.
Okay, I see that a little bit. I didn't watch Suits. I was aware of Suits, but I didn't watch Suits. But I know that's really where he's from.
It's good.
Yeah, I was like, there are a couple of things. I was like, you kind of look like Bradley Cooper to me there, Russell. But definitely useless.
Useless. Anyway. This has been another episode of The Madison, episode 2. This is Caroline.
And this is Mike. Thank you for listening to The Madison Podcast. If you wouldn't mind heading over to Apple Podcasts, Spotify Podcasts, YouTube, or wherever you listen to your podcasts, and rate, review, and subscribe. And while you're there, if you could, please leave us a 5-star review. It helps a lot in promotion of the show. And if you leave us something nice, we're going to read it on the air. And wouldn't that be nice for everyone?
Thanks for listening.
Thank you for listening. This has been an original Pod Clubhouse production. Pod Clubhouse is a podcast network dedicated to encouraging collaboration among podcasters and friends to bring a fresh voice and diverse perspective on a wide array of content. Please visit and leave a comment for us at podclubhouse.com. Rate, review, and subscribe to our podcast feeds on Apple Podcasts. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. You can find us at Pod Clubhouse. Our DMs are always open, and we'd love to hear from you.